I'm Jessica Sunley. It's 2020, we're in the middle of a pandemic. California's on fire. There are horrible things happening around the country on the daily, and we're a couple months away from the election. So it's a terrible time to be releasing a book, but that's what I'm doing. I'd love to be coming around and meeting you and reading in quaint little bookstores, but that is not going to happen anytime soon. So I'm rolling with it. This is my book that's out today. It's called Everyone Was Falling. It's a novel. It kicks off the weekend of July 4th, 2016. It is told by a queer Korean American adoptee named Lucy Byrne, who travels back to her very small white hometown called Bixby. And there she reconnects with her childhood friends Donna and Christy at their 20th high school reunion, and together they survive the mass shooting that happens that night. So that is the premise of this book. You can learn more about it at my website, jessicasunley.com, and there are all the best links on how to buy it. So I wanted to call attention to the words in the front because they are by Henny, and it says, "Everyone Was Falling is as much of a social justice primer as it is a novel. It challenges readers to see the world from a different perspective." And there's more that she says back here. So I wanted to say that in February, when I wrote her to tell her about this book and she agreed to read it and blurb it if she liked it, I was so excited. But then of course the pandemic happened, and there's just been relentless racial trauma, so I did not expect that she was going to be able to follow through. But somehow she did. She made time with everything else that she had going on in her life to do so. So I am so incredibly honored and grateful to her for doing that. Of course you know who she is. In case you don't, Henny is a phenomenal racial commentator. She is a much needed voice of our time. She's all over Instagram, Twitter, but mostly Facebook, I think probably because it's better suited to the long form nature of her work. But you might not know she also has a podcast called Combing the Roots, and the entire first season of that was so validating to me. As you know, I'm a transracial adoptee. I grew up in racial isolation as what Allie calls a super minority. So that's somebody who a person of color who lives in an area that is 90% or more-ish white. So not only was that my experience, but it was also the experience of Lucy in this book. If you like what she has to say, I see a lot of people sharing her posts, and you know, she's so powerful and impactful. So if you appreciate her work, I just wanted to suggest that you pay her through her Patreon, because there are so many women of color, and especially Black women, who are doing this work for little to no compensation because it is so necessary. But we really have to change that. We need to be paying the people who are doing this work, and especially Black women, as they are the most underpaid in this country. So yeah, check it out, alliehenny.com. I believe there are links there. Next, I wanted to bring to your attention the sensitivity reader I worked with on this book, and her name is Aimleen Mousseau. She is just a brilliant person overall. She's a writer, a reader, and comments. She has a podcast with a friend who together they talk about plots and storylines in TVs and movies. But she was amazing to work with on this book, and I firmly believe that if you are writing about another marginalized identity that is not your own, you really should seek out, work with, and pay somebody of that marginalized identity, so you decrease the chances of doing any harm to those communities. And Emmy was amazing to work with. I also wanted to bring to your attention the editor that I worked with for the second time in a row, Laura Major. She is super sharp, also a writer, multi-talented, but she worked with me on Kurium as well. And both of their websites are linked from my website. If you need professional writing services, they are highly recommended. So now I just wanted to read a couple of very, very short chapters to give you a feel for the book. The first one is the first chapter, and it's called There Was Blood. I'm shattering like glass, coming undone bit by bit. I hold myself together, arms crossed with a squeeze. Whenever you're ready, he says, hitting record. The overhead light deepens the hollows under his eyes. Though it's sharpened with time, I remember his face. I peer down at his badge that reads Whitley. I was talking to this guy, Ben. The normalcy of my voice startles me. He was doing all the talking. I was distracted. His facial hair it had like this pattern. I'm brought back to the moment now, forever imprinted in my brain. It moves through me like hallucinogenic honey. But Whitley is bouncing a pen on his knee. I get to the point. And then he just fell. His pale eyes fixate on my upper arm. I look down and notice a speck of blood that the hospital missed. Without thinking, I rub it with a wet thumb as if it were my own. He leans forward, patience waning. Was anything out of place? Everyone was falling. There was blood. He cuts in. Before that. I shiver, gripping my crossed arms tight, pressing away the terror. I'd never been to one of those things before, but it seemed like what I would have expected until... Did you have anyone with you? No, I say, louder than intended. Thankfully. Did you recognize the shooter? I gaze up at the ceiling, blinding myself with fluorescent lights. It's like a makeshift shot of whiskey, a numbing. Shifting my unfocused eyes back down, I say, I think he was wearing some kind of mask, a ski mask, or what do you call them? Balaclavas? Not sure if my mind's just putting it there since it's such a cliche. You say he. You could tell that it was a man? I lift my eyes to his. Aren't they all? His face ticks. You suspect anyone? I haven't really been in touch with anyone here since I left. I can't imagine why. His pen stills. They all have their reasons, none of them good. Could there be a good enough reason? He raises a shaggy white brow. His eyes bounce left and right as if trying to somehow calibrate my face. I suddenly wonder how it looks. Shocked? Scared? He asks, whose idea was it to hide in that closet? I don't know. But when I saw Donna, I knew it's where she was going. As if on a transparent screen between us, I see her running ahead in an emerald green dress. How's that? We used to meet down there sometimes. Y'all friends? Sure? I scrunch my face, ruminating on the word friend. I don't really know her now. We were close years ago. And Christy? How'd she end up with you? There's an inflection to the words she and you. Christy's a town treasure, unlike Donna and me. I saw her on the floor and grabbed her. She was friends with us too, back in the day. His face contorts. Did she say why her husband wasn't with her? I shrug. We weren't in the frame of mind for catching up. And Donna's? I shake my head, face flushing under his quickening succession of questions. My fingers find each other, twisting and intertwining for comfort. I'm surprised she came at all. He squints. Why's that? Being the only black kid in town didn't seem easy. He tilts his chin down. With an air of disbelief, he says, strange she moved back if it's true. Yeah? A chill rushes up my spine, fanning over my skin. I feel somehow betrayed by this new information. Well, there you go. I never understood this town or anyone in it. So the next 2 pages I want to read are about 25 pages after that, and it's a chapter called Life Goes On. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference between wanting closure and wanting someone to blame. The ones who are honest might admit to the latter, while the rest rush to force the former. I imagine the shooter lurking behind what he presents to the world when he's shopping among us, living and breathing among us. Although no one said it, the scariest thing about him is he's likely one of us. And so, in the same way that people tend to draw Jesus and Santa like themselves, they paint the bad guys as foreign. I suppose I'm not above it, but I have no choice since there's no one here like me. When Alexis showers, I busy myself with my phone. One of the reunion non-attendees from our graduating class has created a Facebook group called I Reach Out to You. I take a quick glance at the page. Upon invitation, I was automatically added. Half the deceased shows joined. It's unsettling. I close the app, not ready for it. I shudder at the realization that my hometown will forever be known as the site of the reunion massacre. They keep finding another person who wasn't there and putting their face above the Chiron. Each willing Bixby resident goes on about how awful and frightening it is, but they don't know the half of it. The reporters on TV speak in grave tones, but their removal shines through in their unchanged faces. The papers report the terror as if it's something the whole town owns, but only Donna Christie and I truly know what it's like to survive it. I resent them for using it as an item of interest, sandwiching it between the ridiculous and the mundane. Who raised the fattest swine? And another petty theft occurred at the gas station over by the highway. It's been 20 years since I knew the victims, and we never truly connected, but they were there for half my life. Shouldn't I feel something? Or is it like before? Instead of letting my next thought materialize, I shut it down and file it away. Sucking on the insides of my cheeks, I stew in the knowledge that the worst of the worst can happen, and like it or not, life goes on. It's cruel and unfair. In the midst of the terror, you beg to survive, not fully grasping that the life you had is already gone. So I wanted to say that it was brought to my attention, and I knew as I was writing it that a lot of this book will be challenging for a lot of people, and I thought it important to really go in deep on the details and the nuance of the racial conversations we have with each other, and in particular how it feels when you're of one of the more marginalized identities. So if you are feeling uncomfortable as you're reading it, I really hope that you can sit with it and process those feelings, and maybe that will end up being a positive thing. But of course you might not, and that's totally fine too. Not everything is for everybody, and I certainly didn't write this book for everybody. But that said, I do hope you read it and enjoy it. What else? I wanted to say that I have my paperback over here behind me. It is really unusual to do a double run, which is releasing the hardcover alongside the paperback. But given that we're in the pandemic and funds are tight for a lot of people, I wanted to offer another more affordable way for people to have a physical book. The ebooks are delayed, and I don't know why. They were supposed to be available for pre-order last month, but what I'm trying to accept is there are a lot of challenges going on for a lot of people and businesses that we can't necessarily see. So maybe that's what's happening. I do hope it will be available today or very, very soon. Of course, you can also ask for it at your library. There's never any shame in that. I wouldn't be able to read half the books that I read if it weren't for the library. And lastly, I just wanted to thank you for your support, for bearing with me through this video, and for all of the excitement, the pre-orders, and the shares. They really mean a lot to me. They always do, but especially now, and it's a particularly tough time to bring something that you poured so much of your heart and life into for a number of years, not just me, but other people too. So thank you so much for that. I really do appreciate you. I hope that you continue to stay safe and take all the precautions, because this is a really frustrating time. I know it's hard for a lot of people for different reasons. So yeah, I don't think we're anywhere near the end of it yet. So please do what you can to continue to keep you and your families safe. That's all. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy my book, and if you do, please spread the word, give reviews, and just tell people. And yeah, that's all. Thanks again.